A really important thing to consider when you are setting up your experiment is making sure that we have what's called a fair test. And I quite like this little diagram which talks about the cows moo softly, and it reminds us that in a fair test we change one thing, we measure or observe something, and then everything else remains the same. And that is the key to fair testing, because one of the things you have to do in your analysis is to say whether you think your experiment is a fair test. In other words, can I trust your results? So we talk about these words of bias and unbiased and reliability, and that's really important in science. Because if we're going to talk to you and convince you about something, as a scientist we have to be very confident that our results are correct, or as correct as we can make them. And we have to also think about whether we put a bias in there. Now, a bias is maybe we believe something is happening and we push everything towards showing that this has happened. So a fair test should be unbiased. We just accept all the results and we don't change them, and then we consider what we really found out. Because as with most experiments, one experiment leads to many, many more, because we open up other possibilities of things we can do. And that is another thing you need to concentrate on in your report. Now, reliable information means that people can trust and use it. And that is really, really important to scientists, because our information is used by lots of other people. And they have to know that it is, if you like, accurate and fair. So they have to know that it has been tested, it has been looked at. And from that, we have to make sure that we have high reliability. As we said right at the top front, cows moo softly. So we have everything else that we could be a variable remains constant during my whole of my experiment. And I would like you to mention 3 or more things. Don't just mention one thing. Try to think of as many things as you can, 3 or more, but there's no need to go any more than, let's say, 5. And these things are going to be kept the same all the way through. So you might be always using 25 cm cubes of liquid. So you would tell me every time in your method, you use a measuring cylinder to measure exactly 25 cm cubes. You might be using a 50 ml beaker or a test tube or a boiling tube or some other container. So you should tell me this on the way through, and you should make sure the container you used is the same. There are other obvious things we could look at, but those are two examples of things we should keep constant.